It's Monday, and I am super bored and just wanted to say hello to all my followers. I just wanted to thank you guys all for being my followers and for being my faithful fans. And I know that I kind of said last night that I wasn't gonna do a video on who I am and about who I am and my story and stuff. So I guess I'll just I don't know. I'm kind of scared too. But okay, so I was born in 1994, and this is my story. So, oh, maybe I should wait and do my story later. What do you guys think? Should I do my story now or should I wait? Because I kind of didn't really put in the chat in the description that's going to be my story, so I'm not really sure. Anyway, I think I'm going to. So, I was born in 1994 to a really good family, and I always kind of was a little bit different, and it wasn't really a big deal. But one thing was that my parents noticed that I was kind of different from other kids. Like, I wasn't very attached. I wouldn't play with other kids. I would just kind of play by myself and not really be around other people. And I always was kind of here and there, everywhere. Um, I was um, I was kind of like playing by myself, and then I was playing. I would kind of move from thing to thing to thing, and so I was diagnosed with ADHD um, when I was like in second grade, I think it was. And then I was also diagnosed with a form of autism. I'm on the autism spectrum. And so I've always kind of struggled with more, and I do have a learning disability as well. I was diagnosed with a learning disability too. So I always really struggled in school. School was very, very hard for me. It wasn't fun. I was always, I don't know, just struggling to learn and struggling to be, um, like the other kids. And I always kind of have problems with social issues, like socialization and social boundaries and stuff. Like, okay, so for example, like you call somebody and they don't answer, and then you call them back, and they don't call back, you just leave a message and you wait for them to call back. Well, for me, that little receptor in my brain doesn't go off. And so I was calling people like multiple times a day, and I lost a lot of friends. Um, I got teased a lot in middle school or elementary school, I mean, sorry, for just the way that I looked. I got called Four Eyes a lot. I got called, um, I don't know if it was ugly, but I do remember getting called Four Eyes. I remember getting made fun of because I ate with my family at 6 o'clock every day. I got um, made fun of because we were all in bed by like 8 or 9 o'clock. I got made fun of because we for praying before meals. I got made fun of just because I would stay up late at night. Hi, Addie. So I always kind of really struggled with friendships, especially in. Oh, I got made fun of that. One time, I remember when I was in, I think it was one of the grades. I remember um, was, because the playground was rocks, and so I remember laying down in the rocks and looking up at the sky and then closing my eyes, and my friends buried my glasses and thought it was funny. So then I had to quickly try to find my glasses, and I got in trouble for that. Um, so I guess it's kind of started in elementary school as little things, and then in middle school it was more the way I looked and the way I dressed. And I do remember one time in this was in high school. Yeah, this was in high school. I went to sit down at a table at lunch, and everybody except for like three people left the table because I sat down. I remember just like leaving lunch with like tears in my eyes, and I stopped eating for a while actually after that. I would not eat lunch. I would throw my lunch in the garbage and I would just walk around school while everyone was at lunch enjoying their lunch. Or I'd sit behind a computer desk in our library and I'd smuggle in my lunch in the library and I would sit behind the computer desk, crying. And it really is me naughty, but it's okay. I mean, it happened and it's something that sticks out in my mind forever and ever. And so, I mean, I grew up normal and I always have kind of had a strained relationship with people. And so, my biggest thing was that I struggled with talking to other people or just being friends with them because I just seemed to annoy everybody that I met because I was too much to handle, or I called all the time, or I wanted constantly to be talking to somebody or texting somebody. And I, like, when somebody says I have to go, that's another thing. Like, people would say I have to go, I would like keep talking and talking and talking and talking. I even do that to my mom still to this day. And that just makes all my friends so mad. But anyway, so I remember back to middle school, the summer of my eighth grade year, I had, um, or yeah, so middle school, I had struggled with letting my feelings out and just my relationship with my everybody that I knew, honestly. And so when I started middle school, I really struggled with people and letting out my feelings, and so I would stuff my feelings down. And the way I would let out my feelings was that I would self harm, that I would cut my arms and my legs and my stomach. I would self harm. And I did that for, I want to say, from eighth grade until about 2 years ago. So I'm 23 now. So from like, I mean, I probably did it for 4 to 5 years, 5 to 6 years actually. And so I would self harm and I would um, cut my wrist and my stomach and all the places that you couldn't see it because I would let my anger out on myself because when I had problems with my friends, I didn't feel like I could tell my parents or anybody because I felt like they would just be like, "Well, I told you so. You need to listen to us more." And then I'd have to be monitored. Like people would monitor my phone and like be like, "Are you still talking to them? What are you talking about?" I had to show my conversations and stuff. So it was really annoying. I felt like really stupid that I had to show my, you know, I felt like I was getting babied because, they were just trying to help, but I found it to be like I felt like I was being babied. And so would let myself I would I would I have marks on my stomach still to this day. And I do still have marks on my legs too, which I'll actually show you right now because they're not really that um noticeable, but I don't know if you can see at all. It's probably really hard to see, but right there and right there and right there and there, and then I have some more on my stomach too, but I won't show you the guys that. But so anyway, I really struggled with self-harm. The other people that were talking or had the complaint against you. Oh, thank you, Audie. And so they would like meet with you, and then the other people would like talk, and then they would kind of like try to help you with a solution. And I remember all of my friends, and it goes back to the whole phone thing. I remember my friends would, oh, all my friends, like, I think it was I think there was like 4 or 5 people that met all together and like set up a peer mediation session without telling me about it. And it was, back to the like phone calling and stuff. And so they called me down and I sat in a room and I listened to these people. Like one of them wasn't there, so I think it was like four or five of them, 3 or 4 of them. They were just sitting there, just being like, "Okay, you did this wrong. You call me too much. You're annoying. You text me all the time. You leave long, long messages." I mean, it was just terrible. Like, I get that they wanted to help, but it was like I felt like I was getting ganged up on. And I mean, one of my friends, who was my friend at the time, isn't anymore, was said that she didn't even want to be involved in it. She just kind of was, you know, there. And so it made me feel like, again, it made me feel like I was a baby. It made me feel like I was the bad guy because I didn't really know better. And so I pretty much gave up on friendships and I met a girl whose name was Laura, and she was the sweetest, most quiet person that I knew. She had dark hair, and I don't want to go too much into detail just because, in case her family ever sees this, I don't want to get slammed for talking about her. But anyway, I met her in middle school, and we hung out a couple times after school because I would hang out after school with friends and just sit and talk and stuff. And anyway, I met her, and she was really sweet. And then I kind of opened up to her about all the stuff that I was dealing with, which was, self harm and just struggling with depression because I was diagnosed with depression later on, and that's a later on story. But I was diagnosed with depression, and so we kind of started talking, and she had also dealt with self harm. And so I kind of felt like I could talk to her about things, and I know that she wouldn't judge me. And I remember just kind of getting to know her, and then all of a sudden, I got a knock on my door June 14th, 2011, and it was pretty much one of the worst days of my life. My friend, or the cop showed up at my door and says, "This is the house of Taylor." I'm not going to say my last name because it's already on my profile, but I'm going to delete that. "Is this the house of Taylor?" And I said, "Yes." And then they said, "Is your mom here?" And so my mom walked outside, and I remember we were eating at the time, and my mom like walked out and shut the door behind her, and I'm standing right in front of the door, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do?" Because I've never had a cop show up at my house ever. The only time that we've had cops show up at our house is when our cat died because our cat got shot by our neighbor. And another time was that we have like campfires in our back in the side of our yard, and the wind would blow the smoke into our neighbor's like house because they had their windows open. So they called the cops to complain about us. Or my brother, who has special needs, called 911 a couple of times, so we had the cops show up. So I had the cops show up at my door, and all of a sudden, I went back to eat because I didn't like know what was going on, and I kind of wanted to like go outside, but I went. My mom told me, before she went outside to go eat, and so I went out to eat, and then she came back and she had like tears in her eyes, and so she pulled me into the other room and said, "One of your friends has committed suicide, Taylor, and your name was on a suicide note." And so I just started bawling because I didn't know which one of my friends. And they told me that they couldn't tell me who the friend was because of liability. And they needed to talk to the family first before they found out, um, before they like could release any information about her. And so I thought it was like one of my best friends, one of them that I had. Um, so I thought it was my friend that committed suicide. I and one of the people that had the peer mediation session a few years before, and I was really close to her. I had talked to her a lot. We hung out a lot with this friend that it ended up being. Oh, hi, Bunny Beach babe. I'm just kind of telling my story. Um, it kind of turned into, I was going to just talk about random nonsense, but then it ended up talking about my story to everybody. So anyway, so I thought it was the friend from my peer mediation session a couple years before, like the year before, or maybe it was the same year. I think it was the same year. Anyway, yeah, like the same year as that one. And so I was like really like just my mom was crying and said, you know, one of your friends has committed suicide, Taylor, and we don't know who it is right now, but I just wanted to let you know, and I'm so sorry. And I just remember leaving the other room, the computer room at the time, and I said, I just was like crying and I couldn't even eat after that. And so we went down and had a movie in our basement, and I remember like not even being able to watch the movie. Oh, and also I forgot to say the cop told us that they would like call us later, um and oh, I forgot my train of thought now. So we went down to watch a movie in our basement, and I remember that the cops said that they were going to call us once they got the permission from the family to dis you know disclose the name of the girl, who it was. And so I remember just not being able to watch the movie at all. I remember being so scared and so distracted. And when they finally called and told me that was my friend Laura, I just remember like breaking down. And I was thankful that it wasn't who I thought it was, but I was so devastated that it was my friend Laura, because I remember just loving her, and she was just the sweetest gal in the world. And I just remember And so when I got this text from this guy named Drew saying, "What do you want me to say to her?" I thought she was still alive. And so I begged my dad to go to the hospital, and we set up with the parents to go and see her at the hospital. And so I didn't really know what to expect. So we went to Regent's Hospital in the cities. And when I got in there, because the parents escorted me in there, I I'm gonna probably start crying when I say this, but it was so horrible because she was hooked up to all these different machines. There was some brown stuff being pumped into her. She wasn't breathing on her own, obviously. And I didn't realize, what the 30 minutes plus without oxygen was. Um, but she had hung herself. And her mom found her in the garage as she was going to go to work. And my neighbor was actually, like, with her the day before she died and said that. Can you still hear me, Adi? Can you still hear this? I hope you can. But anyway, my friend, so I went to the hospital to visit her, and she was 30 minutes plus without oxygen to her brain. So she pretty much was brain dead. But I didn't know that because I didn't know what 30 plus minutes without oxygen meant. I didn't know. I was 16 at the time. I just kind of thought, oh, maybe I didn't know how she did it either until I found out at the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and her parents escorted me into her room. And I remember just like I had my dad's hand clutched so tight because I didn't really expect to see what I saw. And she was hooked up to just a ton of machines. There was some brown stuff that was being pumped into her. Every breath was on a ventilator. So what they had done is they tried to cool her body down. and then they tried to warm it back up. But even if she would have come to, or if her body would have responded to that, which obviously it didn't, then she would have been in a vegetable state for like the rest of her life. She would have been she would have had to be like taken care of for the rest of her life. And I just remember holding her hand and telling her to get better, and that I loved her, and that I wanted her to get better soon, and that I loved her. And I remember leaving just devastated, and I think that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Sorry, I get really emotional talking about it because I haven't really talked about it for many, many years now because I've kind of been told. So, I mean, it was really hard, and I got told by a lot of people, a lot of Christians, I got told, oh my gosh, your friend is burning in hell for what she did, because when you commit suicide, you go to immediately to hell, which I am a Christian, and I'm not going to push religion on anybody, but that's what I was told. So imagine, I'm sorry, I'm so, like, it's so hard to tell this story that so the reason why the cop showed up at my door is because there was a suicide note that she had left before she died that said, please watch over these 6 names, they may try to follow me. And she put my name on the list because she knew that um I had dealt with self-harm and just depression. And so seeing her in the hospital was really hard. I remember going home that day and I was just crying. I just remember. And so I got told that one, she was burning in hell. I got told it's not a, I mean, I kind of got, I don't want to say told to stuff it down, but I kind of stuffed it down because people are like, oh, you weren't even that close to her anyway. She wasn't a close friend. Like, I know one of my good friends at the time was like best friends with her. And was, really, 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 really close to her, and it just devastated her because that was her best friend. But I remember getting told, "Oh, you don't even know her that well. It doesn't really. I mean, you need to move on from it." And I still, to this day, I don't talk about it because of that, because I feel like that I just get told, "Oh, she wasn't that close to you. You need to move on. That was 6 years ago, or that was 7 years ago." Almost 7, but that was 6 years ago. So I felt like I had to stuff it down. And so after that, I actually got pulled out of school because I was struggling so bad in school. And then when that happens, thank you, Audie. Yeah, I know it doesn't matter, but to everyone else it did. They thought that it didn't, I guess I thought that mattered, but everyone else thought it didn't matter because she was not that close to me, apparently. And it was just so hard. And then being told that your friend's burning in hell. I mean, she was Catholic, so I believe that she's in heaven. I'd like to believe that she's in heaven. But you know what? It's really hard to know, and I will never know until I see her again someday. And I believe that I'll see her again someday too. But so after that I got pulled out of school because I was struggling in school, one, and two, oh, I'm sorry, Addie. I understand. It is hard. So I got pulled out of school after that because I was struggling in school. My grades were in the toilet. I was almost failing a couple classes. And so I was just beside myself. I couldn't. And so I was homeschooled for the last 2 years of my high school year. And I think it was just better because with learning disability, I had an IEP, so I was in all normal classes, but I did still have an IEP. So I know I almost failed American Studies, and I went to a special ed American Studies, and they went so slow. And I don't care that it was like but I mean, it was like at the beginning, like the Pilgrims and, like some of the wars that were really, really early on in history. and I was getting like 110% in that class. And so it was just way better that I was getting homeschooled. So I was doing a program online, where I was doing my basic classes, and then I was going to a co-op at a church um, for for like once a week, and I had a couple classes there. Like I was taking Spanish and I was taking a photography class, and so I got to be with other homeschool kids. So I met a lot of amazing people there, and I still have a lot of my good friends to this day, and I'm just really thankful that it it just happened to work out that way. And so I moved out of well I moved out of school and was homeschooled, and then I was able to graduate in 2013, and I graduated with like a 3.6 GPA. I think it was like a no, maybe it was a 3.0. It was a 3.0 or 3.6. I don't remember, but it was somewhere up there. It wasn't a 4.0. I'm not a 4.0 student. I never have been. I never will be, and I am okay with that. So anyway, I'm just really thankful that I'm able to talk about my story, and I know it's kind of hard, and there's more that I could add into it, but I just really don't feel like adding it in because I don't want it to get used against me someday. And so that is my story, guys, and I hope that maybe I'll be able to help one person. And if you know somebody that's also struggling or has been struggling with those things, like send them my video because I would love to reach out. I'd love to help other people as long as there's no drama involved because I can't handle drama right now in my life because I have a lot going on. And so but anyway, so that's kind of my story, and I know I have been on YouTube a lot lately because I just found out I found out that so this isn't really part of my story, but this is kind of just another little fact about me is so I was having lower right pain in my right side, like right above my leg. And so that's kind of where your appendix is, I think. I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor. But anyways, I was having really bad pain, and so I went into the doctor, and they um had a X-ray done, and the radiologist, whoever like was reading it, said, "Oh, my thing was completely normal." And then my doctor looked at it, the one that I go to, and she was like, "That's not normal." So there was like a piece of my intestine that wasn't showing up on the X-ray, and so I went to work. So they said, "Well, we need to get you in for a CT." Well, anyway, so I went to work, and then I went to the clinic to get a x-ray to make sure that I needed to get a CT because it's, expensive, obviously, for those who know. And so I went to work, got off early, went to go get a x-ray done, and they said, "You definitely need to go get a CT." So I went to get a CT, and I remember sitting in that waiting room, crying, watching Dr. Phil drinking 32 ounces of liquid or contrast dye because you have to do that. And then then that went by fast. And then when I got on there before I had my CT done, they went into my arm and injected dye into my arm, and I was like, "Oh, that feels so weird. It feels like a water is I can't even describe the feeling, but it was really weird." Anyway, so they found out that I had a 10-pound ovarian cyst. It was the size of a basketball. Well, I didn't know that at the time. So I went home, and then my doctor called me, and she gave me like the medical name for it. And I looked it up on my phone as I was talking to her, and I remember just crying when I read it. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's a cyst," at least. And I didn't know if it was cancer or not. And so I went down and made an appointment to get surgery. And so I had surgery on the 31st of October. So I am 3 weeks out from my surgery, and I am doing really well. I should have put this in another video. Oh well. And so so it was a 10-pound, it started on my ovary, but it went into my stomach. So I was gaining all this weight in my stomach, and it was just kind of like slowly at first. And so we didn't really think anything of it because I just kind of thought I was gaining weight and I was like, oh, it's just probably all in my stomach, And I haven't worked out and I eat a lot and stuff. So anyway, it was really scary. But so they ended up taking it out on Halloween and it ended up being a 6 pound cyst. And it was fluid filled. And so I am 3 weeks post-op today, and I am doing really well. And I just wanted to thank you guys all for listening to my story. And like I said, if there's anybody that that is also struggling or is, kind of coming through the other side like I have, I would love to reach out to them. I would love to talk with them. I've always felt um, like I wanted to be a counselor or like that would help people that have gone through similar situations as I have. And I know that there's so much more that I could talk about, but I just really don't feel comfortable talking about everything in my past. And maybe someday I'll, open up about the rest of it. But I mean, it's it's hard for me to still talk about, and it was 4 years ago. So I talked about it a little bit, but I think I'm gonna just keep that private and maybe someday I will. But anyway, so if there's people that that are struggling, send them to the link. And I just hope that this video will help at least one person. And I love you guys. I love you to the moon and back. And I hope you like this video. See you guys in my next video. Bye.